reading this morning. This is from the Connected Discourses, Samyutta Nikaya, the Cittaviveka, Book of the Aggregates. This one is called 53. So this Book of the Aggregates, so the Buddha presents the Dhamma in many different ways, but he often looks at things through the lens of the senses. Sometimes he's got a whole section of stuff looking at it from the sense basis. And his collection is, this is a reviewing experience in terms of the aggregates. This is unusual. I think it's only Buddha who refers to this formulation of aggregates. So it's his way of talking about experience as not a unity but a multiple factored coming together, called aggregates because they stick together like aggregate does, compounds. So 5 aggregates: rupa, form; vedana, feeling; sanya, perception or meaning; sankhara, mental activations or volitional formations. It's a difficult word. Consciousness. And another presentation the Buddha uses to talk about experience is nama rupa vijnana, in which case you have rupa, vijnana, those 2 aggregates, and nama is the other 3. So it's really the same thing, you can just put it into different boxes. Anyway, Savatthi, bhikkhu is one who is engaged, is unliberated; one who is disengaged is liberated. Consciousness, bhikkhus, while standing, might stand engaged with form, based upon form, established on form, with a sprinkling of delight. It might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with feeling, perception, volitional formations. Based upon these, it might come to growth with a sprinkling of delight. It might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Because though someone might say, apart from form, apart from feeling, apart from perception, apart from volitional formations, I will make known the coming and going of consciousness, its passing away and rebirth, its growth, increase and expansion. That is impossible. So it's a complicated sentence, basically saying wherever there's consciousness coming and going, it's always bound up with these other aggregates. Bhikkhus, if a bhikkhu has abandoned lust for the form element, with the abandoning of lust, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. Abandoning lust for the feeling element, the perception element, the volitional formations element, for the consciousness element. With the abandoning of lust, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When that consciousness is unestablished, not coming to growth, non-generative, it is liberated. By being liberated, it is steady, By being steady, it is content. By being content, he is not agitated. Being unagitated, he or she, one, personally attains Nibbana. One understands, destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more for this state of being. So, I think all the suttas are two problems. First, one doesn't understand them, and then one thinks one does understand them. Because they're not that easy. Because both many of these key terms you have to kind of, what does it actually mean? You know, what is consciousness anyway? Well, you can see essentially the process of the path is something to do with eliminating lust and passion. That's a good place to start. And there is some experience of freedom, of liberation. And it says, and it makes it personally. So you, not just nobody there, you personally experience something through the elimination of this lust, delight, passion. Yeah. And then he says, then he fills in the details. And that's probably, the first major piece to get from that teaching. In that way it makes it quite simple. Also it's very, it causes one to inquire, what is lust for form, perception, feeling, consciousness about volitional formations? And how is that arrested? So it's to do with an experience called intentionality or impulse. Something rushes out, something jumps up. Now that which jumps up, that which has the potential to jump up, this is an aspect of citta. Citta sankharas, it jumps up, it rushes in. And another way of reviewing this liberation experience is when the citta does not jump up, it is liberated. Well, the asava, the main jump up programs, when are switched off, there's again the experience of liberation. And maybe the difference between citta, looking from the citta point of view or the vijnana point of view, is citta makes it personal. Citta is also with a sense of me, I am. And again, it has to be qualified. Now if we come back to our day-by-day experience, we experience ourselves living with the world, a mosaic, a collage, continually shifting collage of shapes and sounds and sights, tastes and fragrances, probably most dominantly in a shifting collage of mental impressions and obligations and concerns and anxieties and joys. In this ongoing collage, right, that's fluid. Now there's nama rupa vijnana. So forms of particular objects, right? One is conscious of them. It's consciousness, they somehow impact. And all kinds of interpretations established around that dominate the consciousness. So I could be walking through lovely Chithurst Monastery in the daffodils in spring, completely embroiled in some niggling doubt. I could be seething away with some great plan or some COVID thing or some conspiracy theory or whatever. So something selects what establishes consciousness. Consciousness is a sense of I am in this realm, right? But something selects which realm you're going to be in. Right? Thought realm, visual realm, or often a medley. But the most dominant one will definitely be the mind, mental consciousness, will dominate. And we're in that. And, the long story is, well, this is called the sense realm. If you cultivate some meditation, you get to a better place than that. You could be in a Devaloka, a sublime, suffusive, radiant state. You could be in that. And you could be in, the Buddha says that's just the beginning. You can get to some extremely exquisite stations of consciousness. Or you can get some really miserable ones too. But generally speaking, the positive ones there's more of them. And so this is when some kind of quality projects consciousness, selects in consciousness what to be conscious of. That's called intention. Cetana. And intention doesn't really cover it because intention sounds so deliberate. This is more like the reflex impulse, the volitional push. And by and large, it's not rational. It's fulfilling certain irrational needs for security. I want to get things sorted out so I know where I am. I want to get the day sorted out. I want to get other people sorted out. I want to get the world sorted out. I want to get the future sorted out. I want to review the past and sort that out. Analyse why I'm like this because of that. The sorted out intention, which is irrational. It's like sweeping the sand on the beach. You could be at it for a long, long while, and it'd still be sand on the beach. A puff of wind comes along, the thing blows into all different directions. It doesn't get sorted out, and you know that, and yet you keep doing it. That's the compulsion. And it's not evil, but it's really compulsiveness. That's what we mean by lust. It doesn't mean exquisite happiness. It means just some irrational, compulsive surge into. Yeah. And this could be by no means pleasant. We can surge into our paranoia. Everybody hates me. We can surge into our guilt. I've done something wrong with me. And then once you're in that realm, your mind will find all the evidence to back that up. You'll look through letters. You'll remember phone calls. You'll remember particular glances. You'll notice jokes. You'll notice who isn't speaking today and think it's because he doesn't like me. That's why. And you'll add it all up. And there, it's cemented. And it's a lust to do that. Yeah. And it's called bhava. And you must have heard this one before. Becoming. Solidify into anything. And there's a lust for that. Because it makes me feel I know where I am. And then I can start strategizing around that. And it's irrational. And like a lot of these irrational, they're addictive. So let's use some strong language. Just like any other addiction, it does not get talked away. You have to break it. You have to starve it. You have to look for something, you have to seek something else. Yeah. And the beauty of it is, it can be done. Citta can turn from its addictions, can be turned, can be coaxed, can be persuaded, not rationally, but by placing other phenomena within its reach, which it does rise to. And these are qualities such as conscience and concern. I was reading an account, an acquaintance of mine who'd been stealing things, heroin addict, all the bad stuff. Wife or partner gives birth to a child, and he looks at the child, and for that moment he thinks, this kid deserves someone better than me. I won't use the language he used, but this kid deserves someone better than a so-and-so like me. That's called hiriyottappa. He said at that moment, turn. And that's the moment he began the long haul to break. But if that turning hadn't occurred, there would have been no firming up of resolve. This turning is precious. Call it faith. It's irrational. You get a sign and recognize that citta can turn. And often the most fundamental thing that turns us is the welfare of other beings. Isn't that beautiful? I may be a complete derelict idiot, but I want to make an offering. Isn't that wonderful? And marvellous that this is possible. A simple thing like that. It may be a basket case, but I see some dog in pain, I want to help it. Turning. And you come out of your world. You seize moments like that. And you begin to, if you're clever, if you get the teaching, that's not inconsequential. That's something to turn, to remember, bring back, focus upon, stabilize in. And of course, when Buddha, great teacher, presents many of these, he said faith in awakening. You walk down the street and you see some nun or monk, Buddhist nun or monk, you think, oh wow, must be so nice, oh yeah, renunciant, that rings, Faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, sense of conscience and concern, loving kindness, generosity, these are all our, pretty much ground floor stuff, opportunities we have. And I think one should underestimate that. And return to it many times. Because you don't need really that much of an attainment to do that. Don't have to be that good, really. And if it's breaking the compulsive formulation of your world, particularly a negative world, a compulsive world, any break in that is a liberation in its own right. Citta can turn. Now the process of picking that up, the Buddha, this is just to kind of begin to talk about this a little. The Buddha said, jayati. bhikkhave. Get into it, meditate. And you review these processes the Buddha talks about, he said when this really gets so it's established, process is established, you get a sense of the turning has become a disengagement, viveka, which can be quite progressive. It's an unhooking from that compulsive bonding, that lusting, that sticking. And when this is established, to the point where you experience it's so established you can feel the effects of it in your body. And this is called jhana. And the reality of intent and citta as a reality is that the intent of citta, its drive, its interest, its inclination, its faltering, has a bodily effect, a somatic effect. And you can experience it certainly when you get very determined, everything tightens up, feel despondent, yeah? So it's a somatic effect. Now when that somatic effect when the citta's intention is good, okay, this is how you know it, and you stay with it, you get a somatic effect, which is pleasant. So it can start off as just maybe a thought or a flashing moment of generosity or goodwill or faith or inspiration, can become an embodied experience that you can dwell in. Can it? Yeah. So this is called a station of consciousness. You establish consciousness on another plane instead of your reality, connected to compulsions. You get something that's more carefully formulated. No, to just use this word, because often people with jhana, you get this sense of it's a kind of concentrated state. Yeah, but it depends what you mean by concentration. We're not talking about focusing on a particular, you must have heard me say this, point, as bringing the heart into unity, settling it, and feeling the effect of that. And everything else you do to make that happen is kind of possible. Loving kindness, for example, and so on. So you get this sense of something that really stands up. Why that's helpful is because you realise how slippery the citta's intent is. How it just slides and rushes out with a moment of visual contact, a moment of taste, a moment of touch. It slides out and it's in. Yeah. Or we get very busy, or we get very intense, or we get very frightened, or we're very compulsive. Or somebody says that wasn't so good and you feel immediately crushed and blamed and disgusting and horrible. No, it's just that particular piece wasn't so good, that's all. You can pick up a sign and make a three-dimensional permanent reality of a self out of it. So we're trying to block some of that. But there's of course a further, as with many of these things, a further point to be made, which is if you are, and I think one of the points of having a calm, disengaged abiding, this is called first jhana. You don't even use the word concentration, he just says happiness and pleasure in the body, disengaged from sense pleasure. Is it in that relaxed state you begin to recognise there's something here But there isn't in any of this. At first glance, it seems that I'm in this world of sight, sound and form and touch, but it's moving so fast I don't really ask, so who's in it? Because I'm dealing with all the stuff. When it settles down a little, when it's no longer so provocative and grabbing and pugnacious and frightening and delightful, it's clearer to see I'm not in this. There's something here that's not of this. And once one starts to try to throw some words around that, we get into problems. We call it knowing, awareness, citta, quiet heart. You can call it yourself if you like. But there's something that's not really in any of this stuff. Or there's that experience of not being in the stuff, whether there's a thing there or not. It's just that. And from a Buddhist point of view, great. That's really good. Doesn't it make you more dispassionate towards the comings and goings? Able to select what you want to come and go on. And maybe even turn off coming and going, unestablished. Now takes some skill. Now from the worldly point of view, not being engaged, disastrous. You've got to be in a job, you've got to be in a house, you've got to be in a relationship, you've got to be in this and that and the other. Really got to get into it. Life's out there, make it work, get on with it, get involved, get engaged. You're not engaged means you don't care. Not engaged means you can't make it. Not engaged means you're not up to it. You're a loser, you're a failure, you're a misfit, you're a dropout, you don't fit, you don't belong, you're an alien. We reject you. You're weird. Society at large is made out of obligations and expectations that will pull. Protocols and laws oblige. Social obligations. You're supposed to come for dinner. It's Christmas. It's my birthday. You said this and that. Doing deals, transactions. Society in general is based upon that. And from a very young age, we have all been inducted into that social model. And with a sense, is the worst thing possible is you don't fit in. The worst thing possible is you don't fit in. You are exiled, an outlaw, rejected, useless, unloved, unwelcome. And then so you try harder to fit in. Or you try another something else to fit into some other group or situation. But you don't fit in. And that's good. Now we go back to life in general. Have another possibility. I call this community, based upon respect, based upon kindness, based upon a sense of moral concern, based upon value. Something I can bring myself to that. So now, the centre, my citta, is picking up its own turn towards faith, towards generosity, towards virtue, towards love. And it's beginning to resonate and have a chance to do that. And share it with other people. That's community. And it can flip-flop. Because everything, there's structures. And once we see those structures, we can go back to the, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I expect me to do this, I've got to be that. And it becomes harmless. So you've got to be careful with this. But the possibility to feel the turn of the citta, to feel the happiness of it, the authenticity of it, and to follow it up, to live it out, it should not be wasted. And rather being something that gets in the way of your meditation, this is part of your meditation. This is the foundation of it. This is jayati. When you get those qualities that you live out, and you feel the results of them in your heart and in your body, you settle into the happiness of that, then you have a good foundation, establishment, to eliminate these irrational drives, the bhava, the vibhava, the asava, the lists of them, those compulsions. This is wisdom. These two fit together. Path of calming or stabilizing, path and process of wisdom, not separate. It takes wisdom to notice where the turning occurs, the lifting occurs, the inspiration occurs, the goodness occurs, and how normal it is, really. Once we have the chance, everybody loves it, that chance to be gladdened, to congratulate others, to see them happy, to help with their pain. We love it. And so the objects are not as significant as the intent. And this is just one. Intention for ardour, for let me really rise and fulfill. Where do these things come from? Can't make them happen. But you see the signs that inspire, and you rise. Something rises. And of course the spluttering self will say, well, I don't think I can, maybe not, that. And you review that as history. Everybody has history. Now, so this is beginning to liberate your intent. And intent is a big part of citta, and knowingness is the other aspect of citta. We might say, if you like little models, this one is the heart of consciousness. This is the thing that pushes consciousness in one direction or another. And if it calms down, it doesn't push consciousness in this direction, it stays it steady. If it's really satisfied, it stops pushing. This is, I think, something to just bear in mind what we're working with. As a practical note, at least practical tip, just be a little bit disengaged from those binding realities that you seem to be in. This one, you get the flavour of it, the rush into it, the adding up of the statistics, the reference to him and her and personal behaviour and yesterday and the details. It rushes in and link up the dots. And here we are. And there's something extremely magnetic about that. This is just like review that as this is a station of consciousness, probably in some kind of miserable abiding. If I don't fight it, if I don't add details to it, if I can lessen the details, if I can just review the process itself as something churning and moving, as energies, perhaps even as energies in my body, then it gives you a little bit of distancing. I think this is part of the value of embodied qualities, why embodiment is the requirement of a jhana. In the embodiment you get some sense of, wait a minute, I'm feeling this really intense sense in my chest, my face is tightening up. What's going on? I'm getting really buzzy and running around and active. What's happening? You can refer to the bodily thing. Begin to open, release, relax the entire body. And it's much easier to disengage the citta when the body doesn't support its craziness. Because citta is not a rational intelligence. It takes its cue from irrational sources, such as these, seeing a child, your child, seeing a dog, seeing a Buddha, something lights up. You don't make it happen. And similarly, you can't make liberation happen. You can't get out of your mess. But you can give the citta a sign where it will almost turn back, turn away. And when that occurs, take the time to notice your breathing in that, notice your body in that, take a few deep out breaths in that. Because this seems to bond, form the essential somatic bond that gives it some ballast. So it's not just a fleeting moment. And when things settle, you can ask this deeper question. Who is in this? Is one contented? So contemplate. A lot of community life, I suggest, is a great opportunity for metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. Celebration, mudita. You look in these suttas, they're often doing just that. These arahants, oh, it's great gain for me to meet such a wonderful, It's not praising, it's just a feeling of being uplifted by the goodness, the diligence, the generosity, the skills of others. Compassion. Sense of wishing to deflect the suffering of others. Metta, wishing to feed. Upekkha, giving people space. This way we arrange our world from a social contract to a community empathy. This can be our ongoing footprint. It helps keep the citta's intentions on the right track. Of course, a community can be also including people near and far, alive and dead. You sit in that, and the qualities of the goodwill begin to have their effect. And it affects how you meditate. Less of that desperate trying to meet the goals, less of that desperate judgment, less of that, how am I doing, when will I get there, stuff. Because now you're actually in the real world of citta's intent, not in the fake world of constructed ideas and notions.